Can anyone catch them, do you think?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, unbelievable. We didn't expect that.
As unbelievable as it sounds, this is another Arsenal podcast. That is the Away Gooners podcast. We bring news and reaction from Arsenal fans from all over the world.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Away Gooners podcast. We've got Bob and Arun with us. This is another transfer special episode. Guys, we seem to be the lucky charm. Every time we record, the next day Arsenal is announcing a signing.
So it has to stop at some point, right? Probably this is the first time.
No, I was more going for the for what is the option for us to turn on the selling factor for it. Like, should we record more often or less often, or should we stop recording?
The only thing we can do is probably pay some teams who are trying to. We can start like a GoFundMe or something for the other teams just to help and buy our players. Apart from that, I don't think anything else. Nobody wants to touch our players with the tongue control. So super social distancing. That's what I would call it.
Super social distancing of selling alone, right? For buying, they are giving us enormous rates. But anyways, we've got our our dream signing of the summer. Ben White.
I didn't know you were dreaming of Ben White. So.
At least the fans were, right? When even the stuff started, I saw like at least 1,673 compilations of Ben White being the best centre back that can be, and there were comparisons with Rafael Varane. But seriously, Bob. So, what are your thoughts on Ben White? Now that he's an Arsenal player, what are your thoughts on Ben White?
See, I don't really have much opinion in terms of what he offers. Of course, what I really look forward is he offer more than what we had last season. That's the hope that I have. Again, how it is turning to, it remains to be seen. I mean, we can't actually look at his performance for one match and one block that he did, and then justify the price tag. I was so excited about Partey last time around, and then turns out that he isn't still managed to reach the expectations that we have. So. I mean, it's a good signing. He is English. He's 23 years old. He's a good centre half. He's been highly rated in England, so it makes sense for us to go there. Probably can't justify the price tag and all those sort of things. He's signed a new deal last term, so Brighton had all the bargaining chips with them. So we can't really go on with the price, but in essence, I'm pretty confident he should be better than what Luis was offering last time. That's how you could see, and pretty much go from there.
Interesting, you brought Luis into the conversation, but for me, because Arun, the number that Ben White was given was number 4, right? So it should be a competition between Ben White and Saliba, right? Saliba held number 4 without ever playing for Arsenal. And now Ben White is given that number. What does that mean? What does this mean for Saliba?
Nothing. I mean, I think we are reading too much into the situation. Just a number is being taken away from a player who's not playing at the club. We're just freeing up a number to make it easier for the first team sitting. I do not think it means anything for Saliba at all. How he performs this season on loan is what's going to determine whether he's going to stay at the club or are we going to be giving him off. Because let's face it, Ben White has been brought in, like Bob said, to fill up certain deficiencies, and it's definitely going to be an upgrade on what we have or what we had in the form of David Luiz. The manager wants to play out from the back, and he knows that we face a vulnerability when we try to do that because of the press that other teams are. They seem to have found out that is exactly what we're doing, and it has been obvious from the way that we've been playing that Leno is not proficient in playing this, so that gives an added incentive to the opposition teams to press even more. So that's where you need players who can counter the press and at the same time get the ball out quickly. That's what Ben White is doing. Rob Holding cannot do that. Ben White has been brought specifically to do that. So probably a quicker centre back partnering with Gabriel and Ben White is the way to go, and Saliba would be in the mix in the future if he performs well. Apart from that, I have never attached significance to the numbers behind the back of the jersey. There is, in my opinion, there's not a lot of correlation between the ability of the player or the reputation of the player and the number they receive. I keep saying this. We are a club that gave the number 10 to William Gallas. So numbers and us, it doesn't mean anything at all.
Actually, in a way, Arun, sorry, in a way, replacing another personal for the same number sort of demotivates the players in some ways. That's probably what I think
could, Bob, but like honestly, if Saliba, there has to be something. Otherwise, Saliba wouldn't have been sent on a second loan, right? There has to be some sort of deficiency in his game. The third loan, yeah, there's some sort of deficiency in his game that might have not suited the PL that needs to be corrected, and that's the reason why he's going back. I know that he was like one of the contenders for the top centre back last season, in spite of playing just half a season, but we're talking about a player that we've hardly seen play. He's never played in the Premier League, and on top of it, he's just 21. That's not the age at which centre backs mature. So I think we're attaching too much to this. I mean, like, I see a plan for his improvement, and ideally, if he doesn't improve, and if the club hierarchy feels that he is not going to be suited for the PL, we win anyway, because if he does perform well in the French league, if we do not want him, there's obviously going to be a chance that with his performances, someone else might be coming to get him. So we'll definitely be making a profit of the 30 million. It doesn't necessarily have to just be the player playing for us. It could also be us winning with the player fetching us a lot more money than we bought him for. So I think we are attaching too much of sentiment to a player in a position that has not played for the club yet. That's my opinion.
Yeah, Vijay, sorry, I have a counter argument as well against this. Not actually to go with Arun, but if you look at it, when Saliba was actually given the number 4 shirt, it was technically held on by El Nene when he was actually sent on loan to Besiktas. So technically, it was El Nene's number that was given to Saliba, despite knowing that El Nene was going to be back at the club. And El Nene didn't take it bad, he took up another number, and I mean, he's been decent enough, and he's never shown the attitude to say that, oh, my number has been taken away, so I won't actually play or anything like that. It's just a mere number, you could say. And then if he really wants to actually put up his performance at the club that he really loves from as a child, then he would come back and pick up any number and just start dusting himself up and then start putting performances on the field. That's it. As simple as that.
It's your performances that matter. Like I said, the number at the back of your jersey doesn't mean anything. Like the number 4 was Fabregas was having number 4. Then it was moved on to, I think, Elneny, and then it's moving back. Mertesacker, yeah, a centre back. So it doesn't mean anything at all. As fans, we have this thing where we attach too much of sentiment and too much of emotions to things that might actually not mean anything at all in the modern game. Yeah, 20 years ago, those numbers meant something. 25 years ago, those numbers meant something. Now these numbers don't mean anything. Now we are having players who are specific for like certain abilities that they possess. It's not about the number anymore. It's about like the abilities you possess. So that's always been the case. It's just that now we still seem to be romanticizing the fact that it's a number that means that this guy has to be there and all that. I really don't see the need.
If as fans we are not going to overthink, then I don't see any point in having podcasts, guys. So we need to overthink.
Yeah,
we need to do these things.
That's true.
But for me, the question is that, right? Like so. The question is not about the number. The question is about the player, right? The very little of Saliba that I saw in Arsenal shirt was when he played that pre-season friendly, or is it the under 23 game?
Under 23s, yeah.
And I didn't find him to be this kind of like people defining as the great French centre back.
Let's have this conversation next year, Vijay. I think the deal has been signed for a year now, so probably it's time to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, but my concern with that deal is that it has put him in the same club as Matteo Guendouzi. Did you guys see his picture on Instagram with Matteo Guendouzi? So it means both the young revolters are together at a club.
I wouldn't. That's too harsh calling Saliba a revolter. He didn't revolt about anything. I mean, like I think he is. I understand what you mean. Like putting him in a basket with a bad apple in the form of Guendouzi. I do understand your concern, but I think if we do want this guy to be the player that everyone hypes him up to be, and if we do want him playing for us, we would ideally expect him to beat these distractions and like come out on top. You know, that's also a test for him during his loan spell. You're not just looking at how he's playing, you're looking at how he's behaving and what he's doing as well. Like if he's terrific but ends up getting like into 5 brawls a season and gets 5 red cards, again, it's a huge negative point. So the club is definitely not going to get him back at that point, even if he's like a world beater. Your 5 red cards, we already have enough candidates to get red cards in the team, and we do not need an additional one. So I really would think that if I understand your concern, but I would expect him to like beat that as well, beat the distractions as well. If you want a good young player in, you need to make sure that the young player has the right head on his shoulders. And that's why we couldn't have like Guendouzi because of his, prepubescent antics that the Hertha Berlin coach described them as. So it's something, yeah. So it's those things that we wouldn't want Saliba to get into. So I would see this again as another test for him.
Okay, moving on from the centre back though, because I mean we would have to wait and see what Ben White brings. There has been talks about his value, and 50 million, some say is a little bit too much, because the way Brighton is set up, they would have accepted 35 is what I'm hearing. But again, all this value.
But the extra, like I said, Picasso earlier, that extra 15, 20, normal market, he would cost about 30 to 35, I want to say, because of the abilities that people say he possesses. And he's again gone to, he was a part of the squad that went to the Euros. Not a lot of people could make it to it. So that's how big the competition in England is. It's not like you do not have enough players and you have to pick Ben White to go. That's never the case. So given all that, his ideal value would have been somewhere around 30 to 35 in a regular market. And it's because of, the fact that we have COVID and we have all this, and he's English. That definitely boosted up by 50.
He signed a deal last year, so that makes all the difference as well. So, and that was the primary difference between Varane's price as well. So, had he got a bigger contract or a longer contract at Real, then it means that he would have easily commanded about 70 million fee, and United wouldn't have even got him in the first place.
Yeah, but the concern for me, Bob, is that Ben White, at least from what I have seen in Brighton, plays in a back three. That is the concern I have. Although people have been raving about him, about his time in Leeds, where Bielsa really wanted him to continue and he played as a back four. That is something that I need to look at. But again, he's 23. He's a centre back who has always improved. Championship, he got into a really good space, and in Brighton, he got into really good space. So going by that trajectory, I'm still positive about the signing, and it's a longer deal. It makes sense with all the Brexit and all those things to go for English players. So we'll see. Time will tell us if this is going to be a Weiss or a Mustafi. But the concern right now that the centre back is sorted, is midfield, and it seemed to be that we always have this curse in midfield, right? With preseason, you mentioned Partey. With preseason game, he gets injured. He looks absolutely amazing in that game before he gets injured. Even in the other games that he played, he looks like he's ready to show who he is. And it was very exciting for me to see what he was doing on the pitch. And I was waiting eagerly for the season to start to just showcase what Partey is. whatever we thought of him before. Now that he's injured, this is making us, to put it lightly, a little thin in the midfield space, right? So, what are your thoughts on what this means for Arsenal?
Look at it this way: Partey was not even performing to even 50% of his abilities that he showed at Atletico. So, which means that what could potentially go wrong from what happened last season? I mean, I'm talking about in the worst possible way that could happen. We would be completely fragile in the midfield, which we've always been in the past few seasons. We've never been strong enough to actually face someone like City or, I mean, all the toughies there, and then win the midfield battle as such. We've been always short, and then we've never got a proper holding midfielder, and at the same time never got a passer or a box-to-box midfielder to actually complement him. So that's been always there, and we thought for some reasons that Partey would sort of get back to his best that we know he could. I mean, and it has taken a minor glitch, that I would say. We just hope that he comes back in 2 to 3 weeks that they've predicted, or it could be also a smokescreen where he could potentially be in there are actually a lot of contradicting reports coming out on Partey. Some say that he's going to be missing at least the first 3 weeks for the league, and some
4
say
to
he
6
could
weeks,
potentially be back earlier. So we don't know what's really going to happen, but I think for the worst, we would be starting with our new midfielder, which is Xhaka 2.0, and Lokonga, potentially, who's become an old midfielder now with the new signing that we've got. So they both might potentially get the nod for against Brentford and possibly.
Who's the new midfielder, Xhaka 2.0 that you're talking about?
Oh, you don't know.
The post-Euro fame, or post-Euro godlike Granit Xhaka. But Bob, before I move to Arun, right, I want to stick to Partey a little bit on that, right? Because the question is that because it's an injury, and it's not a long-term injury, at least from the looks of it, knock on wood, but it looks like an injury, and that is going to take away some part of the initial part of the season. So how do we plan this, right? Do we get a player for getting or replacing Partey right away, or do we go for a long-term future where Partey is going to come back and is going to be in contention? So do we get a player to complement him?
See, ideally, with Xhaka potentially on the verge of signing an extension, which means that I don't think we would be going in for a midfielder at least. Having got Lokonga, I think we consider ourselves covered in that area. That's what I would think of from a club's perspective. Like, we are not heavy spenders like City or Chelsea, etc., where they buy players in excess and then think of who to sell. We never do it that way. We've got El Nene, who's not looking to move on at this point. We've signed Lokonga there, and we've got Xhaka as well. Who's
and Willock looks really good.
And Willock potentially, yes, if he's going to stay back, yes, Willock as well along. So which means that considering all the options, and we can't rule out Torreira yet, because there's been absolutely no interest from anywhere on Torreira. So he is as well in the running for one of those midfield positions there. So which means that we consider ourselves well stocked for that position, and I don't really think that we would be going on to buying anyone to replace Partey either in the short term or in the long term future. The short term plan would be if Lokonga still performs to the level that he showed against Chelsea, possibly against Spurs as well, he would get the starting lineup or starting berth against Brentford and then potentially against Chelsea as well. And that alongside him would be either Xhaka or potentially El Nene if Xhaka is being deployed in a left-hand side role. which I don't think he would be, considering that Kane is back. So most likely it would be Xhaka and Lokanga starting in the midfield role against Brentford and potentially against City as well. Sorry, Chelsea.
But Arun, so that kind of puts me into a place, right? Because this is going to be one of the difficult season for us with regards to how it's going to start. Especially with Brentford, then we have what do we have? Chelsea, then we have
City and Chelsea.
City, Chelsea, and then I think Burnley, and then we have the North London Derby. So this is potentially a very, very difficult start to the season. And Partey, even if he comes back from injury after like 4 to 6 weeks, like, in a good way, if it's 4 weeks and he comes back after Chelsea game, he's going to be back from an injury again, which means he cannot play 90 minutes for the next couple of games at least. At least I don't expect him to be. And although Lokanga is looking good, there is going to be, at least from what I know of Arteta, there's going to be some apprehension of starting a new signing right away. So do you see us having a difficult start to the season right away? Do you see us going into the season with a potential of like, oh my God, we are very bad?
It is, okay, I'll be very honest in my assessment of this. We have probably the weakest midfield of all the teams that are trying to get into the top 6. Let's put it top 7, I would say, including Leicester. We have probably the weakest midfield of all. And that is our biggest concern. And that is what is going to probably bring about, not bring about, I don't want to be that negative right at the beginning, but that is probably what is going to affect us the most during this season. Even with Partey not being injured, I agree with you. He was having like a terrific preseason. He was running the game all alone. He was pulling the strings all by himself from midfield, and then he gets injured. Take Partey out of that midfield, it looks paperweight. You put anyone else in there, be it Xhaka, like of course, given the options that we have and given like the deficiencies in other areas that we have, which probably would be prioritized, Xhaka is definitely going to be a starter, right? So it was always going to be Xhaka and Partey in the midfield. And with Partey gone now, we have the other options that we have are Willock likely to be playing. Willock, Lokonga and El Neni. Out of these three, the only one who probably looks like he would be fit and would fit our gameplay is Lokonga, because he's a guy who plays both as a 6 and an 8, and he's someone who can beat the press. Like I said, that's very important for the kind of gameplay that we have, the style of play that we have. We need people who can beat the press and counter the press and take the ball forward, and that's where all the teams are attacking us. So Lokonga is ideally the person to be playing there, but whom we be playing there is Mohamed El Neni. And that is how we are going to start the season. So, like I said, the deficiencies in other positions, such as like, the number 10, means that we would probably be prioritizing that more with all the talks of Maddison signing. So that would again mean that this will be taking probably a backseat. Combine this with the fact that we've not been able to move on our midfielders. We already still have Torreira, we have Amen, which means that we have an excess of quantity, but not of quality in our midfield, So all these factors are sort of preventing us from getting someone who could possibly be like an understudy either to Xhaka or Lokonga. Xhaka or Partey. Now, the way I see Lokonga is that he's going to be someone who's going to be a very efficient ball carrier in the future, with us getting more of an enforcer. At least that was my idea until like the 2.0 happened, So with that happening, now that we see this person, the Xhaka being a fixture for the future, that doesn't leave us with a lot of options, right? So if we were to be playing with what we have, El Neni, ideally it should be Lokonga. But I get what you mean when you say that Arteta might not be ready to play a debutant right away in the first game of the season. So given all that, I think we'll be having El Neni. I don't see any more signings in that department, primarily because we're not able to move anyone out, and the Maddison rumors are gaining steam. The club will definitely prioritize that, given that we have only one number 10 in ESR. So we will be I don't see anyone new coming in. The club's direction right now seems to be correct. With given the fact that we're not investing on like 27, 28-year-old finished products, but we're investing on people who are 23 or younger, and they have a lot of potential and a high ceiling, and could probably go on to replace either Xhaka or Partey, like in the case of Lukonga in the future. But outside of that, right now, yes, we are going to be having a very deficient start. Let's hope that Partey's injury is not going to be 4 to 6 weeks as earlier predicted, because we definitely cannot be going in with Xhaka and Elneny or Lokonga for 4 to 6 weeks. That would be suicidal. We are losing pretty much like all momentum right at the beginning. Even if we manage to win against Brentford, it would be sort of a false start like we did against Fulham last season, because the real test is only going to be coming right after that. And you're not going to be having your best players. Our transfer situation is not sorted. We still are deficient. But again, in terms of midfield, I don't think we are going to be like getting anyone special from now on to play in those to fill in that Partey gap. I don't think the club is in the right situation right now to make an investment there.
But okay, so let me quickly put this question up, right? Like, because we have been touching upon it and we have been skipping around it. Like Xhaka 2.0, Bob. What is your opinion on giving him a 4-year extension? He's 28 now. 4-year extension means by the time he runs out of the contract, he would be 32. Or is my math wrong? Right? Like,
Yeah.
So, I don't get it. I get it that we are not able to sell him for the price that we want. Why a 4-year extension? Should have been like 2 years.
Ideally, yeah. So, but he knows the fact that he is in his last big paycheck, and he would have really pushed for that to happen. And club would have actually worked out the math. I'm believing that they would have, had they invested in a proper midfielder to replace Xhaka. First of all, they would have sold Xhaka for 15 million pounds. That was actually their asking price. 70 million euro was the asking price for Xhaka, which would have roughly translated to 15 million pounds. So, which means that if they had to buy, let's say for argument, Locatelli would have costed the club 35 million. So, which means that there would have been a gap of 20 million that we would have spent on Locatelli, and then potentially adding on his wages as well for 5 years or whatever that we are going to sign him for, which means that the total outlay of the transfer could take about 35 or 40 million. If you look at that, I mean, even if you compare that with one who was early linked to, which was Ruben Neves. Ruben Neves was very similar in stats as like what we've discussed in the previous parts. Ruben Neves is proven in the Premier League. He's got stats very similar to Xhaka, and he would have costed about upwards of 35 million with Wolves. So, which means that the total outlay of the transfer over a period of 5 years would actually become 45 to 50 million. If you look at what the other option that we had, which is possibly what has been taken, is we've got a player who is half decent to the level that Arsenal are at the moment. So, which means that just capitalize him and just pay up the fee for those. I mean, pay up his salary increase, which is going to be, I mean, he's already on a decent pay. I'm not exactly sure what pay he's on at the moment, but I'm guessing he should be on 100 or 120 or something like that. So, which means that even if it were to increase for 130 or 140, the total cost of what we are actually spending on Xhaka for the next 3 years or 4 years is not going to be any more than what we would have, had we actually got any player in return. Whether that player would be an absolute superstar, I mean, we floated around Locatelli, but Locatelli was never interested in signing for us, and Juventus are somehow got that in their head, and then they're actually moving the chips very slowly. They have not really rushed through this transfer because they knew that the player only want to join them if they have a chance. So, which means that we are out of contention. The other ones that we have are Ruben Neves and Bissouma. I don't think there's been any interest. I mean, apart from the earlier stages that we had. So which means that with the options available in the market, Arsenal have taken the most safest way out in extending his contract, and that makes perfect sense. That I would say.
It makes perfect sense now, Bob. My question is that what is going to happen in future, right? The problem with us selling has always been that other clubs that we are selling to, because we all these players like say William or Lacazette or Suarez or now Xhaka, Bellerin, all these players are not going to be sold to a higher club, right? It's not going to be sold to a higher club. They are going to be sold.
I think that's the risk that the club is willing to accept. I know we've made a lot of these bad moves. I mean, particularly in the very recent past, where we've actually signed on players at their tail end and then and not been able to move them on. I'm just hoping that it turns out well in our favor. It's just a hope, I mean, they're just taking their chances with this one, and they're just looking to see if, in case he's going to kickstart from what we've got. Historically, it tells otherwise for us. That's the worry for an Arsenal fan, because historically, every player who's actually signed on a new club, a new contract at the club, has historically been performing very bad, and that's a very valid thing as well from a fan's point of view. But they've just looked at the person and the profile, and then what he actually brings into the team, and and then they're just taking their bait on that,
But Arun, what are your thoughts on Xhaka 2.0? Right, like
Xhaka 2.0.
Guys, just a word of caution here before you start saying anything. I'm pretty sure what you guys are going to talk about. Don't stop the messenger, please.
I was expecting this. There'll be no shooting of the messenger, but I would just like to start with taking a part of what Bob said in terms of the club hierarchy taking a bet on Xhaka and offering him this contract. If these are the kind of punts that the club hierarchy are going to be taking, then I wouldn't let them anywhere near Vegas or a race course, because they are going to burn all their money betting on the wrong horses or the wrong slotting machines. That's definitely going to happen, because for me, this is probably a transfer decision that shows that we have not learned from our past mistakes. Past mistakes, including as early as getting William last season. Of course, it could have turned the other way, but now it did not, and we have like a player on bloated wages who's not being wanted by any other club, who doesn't fit our plans either. I see Xhaka's situation turning out to be a similar situation, because in my head, it was a no-brainer. If Roma doesn't want you, they're not willing to pay the 15 million, then that means that you are not going to be sold this term. You are going to continue staying. And ideally, I would like him to run his contract down. It's simple logic. You do not, when a player is not able to fetch 15 million when he's 28 and had probably like a tournament that would make the Italian league, it's tailor-made. What he did in Euros was tailor-made for Italy. The amount of time that he had on the ball, the amount of space that he had, he was going to enjoy that in Italy. It also showed that he's not good enough for the Premier League. That tournament showed us a lot of things. I don't know what Edu was smoking while he saw that, but this is what I could see when I saw the thing, which made it more clear that he would become a better player in the Italian league, in the Serie A. Now, the transfer falls through. What do we do? Instead of running his contract down, we say, hey, you're 28 years old. We know you're not fit enough for the league, but we have a shortage of leaders. So here you go. Sign on 4 years more. We'll keep you till the time you're 32. Because let's face it, if nobody wants him when he's 28 with the kind of form that he's been, and I'm thinking that this is probably his ceiling, is not going to improve any further, we have got a huge problem in our hands. Huge problem in our hands. Keeping this guy till 32, letting him run his contract down at 32 rather than 30, and paying him those extra 2 years, Right now, like Bob said, if he's probably earning 100 to 120, an extension would definitely involve an increase in salary. And nobody is a saint to say, I love this club, so I don't need any of an increase in my salary. I'll just keep on the same. No, this is a large, big contract before he hits 30, after which he's definitely not going to be playing in the top leagues. Or even if he does, it's going to be for a mid-table team. You have made all of that possibility. You've thrown all of those possibilities into the dustbin, into garbage by offering him a contract like this. We are going to be stuck with this guy till he's 32, not being able to move him on. It's not just him. By keeping him in, you are preventing the club from getting to the next stage. It is obvious that for the evolution of the game in the club, he's not the right piece. Though he had a stellar season, he's not the right one in that position. But you have reinforced that, like you've gone completely against that logic, and you're giving him more time and more money. This for me is probably going to go down as one of our worst decisions. The moment we realized that we were not able to move either Lacazette or Xhaka on, in my mind it was, let's run their contract down, because that seemed very logical in my head. We have to move forward to the next level. These guys are not the ones who are going to be helping us. Lacazette turns up every game, but it doesn't mean that he's going to win you the league. That's obvious. We found that like as soon as he joined us. So for a player that has polarized the fan base like no one else, for a player whose limitations are very obvious in this particular league, for a player who has not been wanted by anyone else, the only club that was linked with him was Roma. If he was really as good as what people think he is, we would have definitely had at least one more club, right? Let's not like it's just one club, Roma, in the Italian league that tried to
wanted to join Jose Mourinho. That's what was actually the narrative.
Let's forget about like whom he wanted to join, Bob. Let's think about who wanted him. From that aspect, can you name one team outside of Roma who really wanted him? I can let's forget about the big five leagues. Let's even look outside. Did anybody want him? No. We are giving an extension to an unwanted guy, making him even more unwanted with every passing year. So the club's logic, the club's hierarchy's logic makes absolute no sense to me. And we are finding ourselves in a worse situation than last season. If you really think about the first team players that we've added to the last year's squad, it's only Ben White. Lokonga and Tavares are not first team players. And Xhaka 2.0 was not supposed to be a first team player, right? It was all said and done that he was going to be leaving. So the club was ready for life without Xhaka. And then we do this with him, making him seem indispensable when that's absolutely not the case. We're shooting ourselves in the foot repeatedly, over and over again, by offering contracts like this. I don't know if we're going to recover properly and in time from a mistake like this. That's my opinion.
So yeah, that's basically what I have been thinking about it too. For me, the biggest problem is the 4-year deal, right? If it was a 2-year extension, I would be happy.
I don't really see the need. Yeah, but I don't really see the need for an extension at all. Like, what is the logic behind the extension? Why does he have to extend?
I mean, to just hold the value, right? I mean, if we
there is no value. That's what I'm saying. There's absolutely
any value. Like, yeah, I think it was quite open in the market, Vijay. So the only team, like Arun said, who wanted. I mean, the reason as to why this dragged for so long is because, Roma were the only team who were interested, just because he wanted to actually play under Jose Mourinho, which is all fair enough. But they actually remain fixed on their price. They said, we won't even pay you a cent more, and we just want the same player. Arsenal didn't probably budge through that, and then they just said, what, we're just going to keep him. No matter what, we're just going to keep him.
That's what it says to me.
See, there are two things, Bob, in this. See, for me, the first thing is that I don't have a problem with keeping him for this season if we don't get the right price, right? I don't have that problem on that. Giving him an extension, which will be 2 years, I'm very happy because we are having players coming up. I want to see what Willock can do. And I don't know about you guys, but I am actually excited about what the player Willock is becoming, because I don't know if you guys noticed during the preseason friendlies, he looks jacked, he looks bigger, he looks stronger. Willock before, for me, like last season, looks like someone who could be pushed easily off the ball. He wants to hold on to the ball and he could be pushed easily off the ball. That was the problem for me with William. But in this preseason, what I'm seeing is he looks to have grown bigger. The same with ESR. ESR looks to have grown bigger. They have become something. They are becoming something else. I want to see what Willock is becoming. I don't know if
Honestly,
he would end up. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Sorry, honestly, I think I pretty much mentioned this in the last part as well. To me, I would want to cash it on Willock. And Newcastle looks like the only realistic team who want him. And with their transfer budget, they can only afford players like Willock in their team. Let's make use of that and just sell him off for a decent fee, 20 or 22 million. That's what is, I think, being offered. If we could actually get that, let's cash it on.
But I think that wouldn't be a possibility, Bob, just because of the fact that because of Partey's injury. I think Partey's injury has made it like I said, I don't think we are going to be getting anyone new in that position, which means that we probably would be retaining Willock. But I still don't understand like how this is related to Xhaka signing an extension or Xhaka signing any sort of an extension,
Yeah, so the second point for me was that, right? Like if it was a shorter extension, I would have been happy. But even why I say that even as a shorter extension, I would be happy is this is not a market that is for all teams. Let us be frank. We are in Premier League. We are seeing other clubs, other leagues where there has been no signings. Like Dortmund is not making any signings. Italian clubs, apart from Juventus, who has the pull, is not making any signings. None of the Spanish clubs are making signings. This is a market that is
but they don't play in the same league as we do, Picasso. So
no. But what I'm trying to say is that this might be a year of the impact of COVID is being felt. So holding on to Xhaka and holding on to his giving him an extension and holding on to value makes sense in that sense. But again, the wage gap on that is going to be something that Italians or mid-level Spanish teams or mid-level Bundesliga teams are not going to be able to match, or Liga on teams, they are not going to be able to match. That is the problem. And giving him a 4-year extension is a lot. I would have preferred a 2-year extension if we are trying to hold on to him for this season and trying to hold on to his value for the upcoming season to be sold. Right? That is my point on it. But anyways, if we are going to keep him, we are going to keep him. We can rant all about it. We know whatever is going to happen. But Arsenal losing money is something that has been common in a couple of weeks. The major problem for me is that remember Wenger days where we used to always talk about the last piece of jigsaw. Now I don't understand what pieces we have in the jigsaw. Are we even having pieces to fill in the jigsaw? I don't know. We always
have
talk
3 of them. Tierney,
one minute, Bob. I'm sorry to cut you before you start. Whatever we heard about the final piece of the jigsaw during Wenger times was a smoke screen. It's definitely a smoke screen because even at that point we had a lot of pieces missing, but we were made to think that the players that we had were world class and made to believe that there were just 1 or 2 pieces missing in the jigsaw puzzle. That was never the case.
But Arun, see, that is the other part of it.
I'm saying the situation has not changed. It's pretty much the same situation. It's just that we will not have a Wenger to make ordinary players look good. That's why we're being exposed right now.
No, but still, right? I get it. Ordinary players making to be feel good. See, one of the best players of last season, we are not able to sell him to Roma. And during Wenger times, we will be able to sell even a decent player to any club. We were upselling. We were selling to Juventus. We were selling to Bayern. We were selling to Real Madrid. We were selling to Barcelona. We were not selling. We were not trying to sell to Roma. We were not trying to sell to some Villarreal or something, and them undercoating us. That didn't happen during Wenger days. Right? From a selling perspective, I'm very frustrated with this whole Edu thing because I don't think he has sold anyone at any decent price or anything positive. And right now we have touched upon a lot of players. Like I said, Torreira, even Guendouzi is out on loan. He's not out. We didn't sell him. Kolasinac is still waiting. Cedric Soares is still waiting. Willian is still waiting. How are we going to sell these players?
I can I take this one, Bob, first, and
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
For me, the biggest thing that prevents us from selling players, of course, players are in form, are out of form. That's normal. That happens to every player. But where we make the mistake is by offering everybody a big contract, more than what they deserve. In like the similar situation. That's why I said it's going to be the same situation in Xhaka as well. That the problem is that we think these players are coveted, and all the other clubs are going to come for them when it's obvious that, because all that we need is for a player to show some glimpse of potential, and all of the media starts buzzing. Oh, Arsenal are going to be they're having, so eventually the plan for them would be to sell him. The club panics a bit and they start offering them contracts that they do not absolutely deserve. Like I know Willian was signed on a free, but who was the other club that was competing for his signature? I think it was Tottenham, right? Were we so desperate to beat Tottenham that we were going to offer him bloated wages? That seemed like the case, and that's what happened. So we are struggling to move a guy like Willian on. We're struggling to move a guy like Kolasinac or Suarez on because of the wages that we offer. It's more than the performances, in my opinion. Nobody is willing to take those players at that high wages in this market, especially. It's like a combination of so many factors that happen at the same time. Willian, there was a deal almost stuck with Inter Miami, but it fell through at the last moment. Why? Because Willian wanted £160 per week, £160,000 per week. MLS is not the same as England or Europe. You cannot be expecting the same amount. And their highest paid player was Higuain at £80,000 or even less. So there is such a high disparity that is making it more difficult for us to move these mediocre players on higher wages off. And we don't seem to have learned anything from that. That's the thing that bothers me the most. It's not about the recruitment. It's not about the player sales. It's about the fact that we're making it more and more difficult for ourselves with each player that we sign on, making it more difficult for us to sell in. Each player that we sign or each upgrade that we give, it seems to be made without an idea of what's going to be happening in the future. It's very I find it's very short-sighted, the way in which they're giving the extensions and signing people on bloated contracts. You think you're saving money by not paying a transfer fee, but you're actually shooting yourself in the foot for the future. You're making these guys unsellable. So that's where that's the thing that worries me the most in terms of how they sign and what could possibly be the reason why we're not able to move players on. Because form is something that happens to everyone.
These are years of wrongdoing, Arun. If you look at the earlier days, I think if I could say from memory, right since David Dane left the club, we've been completely short on this area, and he was a master negotiator, as we all know. And right since he left the club, there has been absolutely, this whole thing is in a turmoil. Gazidis put us 10 steps behind in terms of all these doings, and then hiring a stats kind of guy, Moneyball guy, to actually sign players. And that was how we signed the last Gabriel. And then a lot of other players as well. Mustafi was actually signed. So we made mistakes over mistakes, and we still keep repeating them. I mean, that's
the thing that bothers me the most, because you learn from your mistakes. You are allowed to make mistakes if you're able to learn from them and not keep making those mistakes over and over again. We started making that mistake with Ozil. Of course, Auba had to be done because he was the senior most player at that point, and we had to give him a contract extension. That was something that had to happen. But after that, we still continuing to repeat those same mistakes. That's where I feel it doesn't make any sense for me how this thing is happening.
No, for me, the biggest concern with this whole thing is, right, Bob, that what is our valuation of these players, or what is our valuation of talent? That is what is my problem here. What are we valuing a Willian at this age? What are we valuing Xhaka at this age? What are we valuing Lacazette at this age? That is what it is being reflected for me in the wages. And if we are valuing players wrongly, how are we going to trust this footballing hierarchy within Arsenal to make signings or to make even plans for future? about the club, because I don't see how their valuation is transformed, or how it comes into fruition. I'm not able to see that. Right, that is my problem.
One thing there's been, which the journalists touched upon this at the start of this window, is the fact that Arsenal have now, gone are the days where they used to spend on useless players and then not being able to move them and all those sort of things. And then from this season on, they're going to be signing players who they feel would actually increase their market value or even their transfer value. And having said all these things, writing all these things and then offering Xhaka a new contract doesn't make sense to any fan. But we could just possibly think that there are things which are happening at the back which we are not aware, and then potentially that could be a
Bob, just 1 second. If you're
just making things up, buddy.
No. I mean, I just wanted to stop you there because we're talking about the Xhaka contract, but there are talks about Bayern also getting a new extension. So, you said, there seems to be no learning. There seems to be no learning at all. If you're going to offer Bayern and Lacazette who are not being wanted a contract extension, what are you learning seriously?
Don't even get me started on Bellerin, because
I said more likely.
Yeah, go on, because
I don't know if you guys saw the preseason friendly against Chelsea when Bellerin played. He gifted away the second goal. He came in and gave the ball away. It was not even no one dispossessed him or he didn't miss pass.
Yeah.
He passed it right to the Chelsea player and they put it into the net. That's how bad Bellerin has become. I used to love that guy for whatever he is. And I love him as a person, as a human being. He does a lot of good things. But as a player, I don't want him in my club. And talking about giving him a contract extension is mad. Go ahead, Bob. Sorry.
No, actually, there are even madder people there at the club. So there is only little madness that I can add. Anyway, so so I think we could pretty much move on. It's been the decision taken by the club. As what Arun touched upon earlier, our biggest worry for this transfer window, more than how we are going to perform on the field, is how we are still going to get rid of all these other people who are still left behind from this old mess. My list would mandatorily include William Kolasinac, Torreira, and then Maitland-Niles for sure. Potentially Cedric Suarez.
Lacazette.
And then Bellerin. Yeah, maybe if in case we get a replacement for Bellerin, yes, potentially, I would think so. But yeah, rest of the things, Nelson and all those ones, I'm not really sure what's going to happen with them. That more depends upon the incomings that we get for those players who are going to be moved on. That's going to be the biggest worry for this transfer window. We might still buy a number 10. Maybe, I don't know, if we just open our purse strings to buy in Madison by offering them a sweetened deal or anything. I don't know if it's going to be possible. There has been lots of rumors surrounding that, and it makes some hope that you think that could potentially happen. There is actually a liking as well from the player side of things. Should a move or should a realistic move come to Leicester, he would be in a position to accept to our move. And I don't know, there's been talks of Lautaro Martinez as well, but that more depends upon. See, it looks very laughable at this point, but we don't know what's going on at the back. I would have really laughed off when before we signed in Aubameyang, because of all the clubs that he could have actually gone to, he chose Arsenal. I don't know how that happened, but that still happened, right? So until that doesn't happen, we still can actually talk about what's happening at the back of the scenes. So Inter want money, that, and they're open to selling Lautaro. But the problem is Chelsea are actually moving way ahead in signing Lukaku, and more likely that they would still succeed with the money power that they have. So which means that it might potentially become difficult for us to sign Lautaro. Even in the wildest possible dreams that I'm talking about, it would become very difficult in that regard, because they wouldn't want to part with their most prolific friend too. So,
but Bob, just one question on that. Like I understand what you mean. Like when Chelsea are ahead in the race, and it's going to make it difficult for us. But doesn't our current situation already make it difficult for us to go for someone like Lautaro Martinez? Given the fact that we have, Aubameyang is sitting on a 350k per week contract, so he's not going to be moved on. We are not going to find any suitors for him, right? That leaves us with the remaining three strikers, which is Lacazette, Eddie, and Balogun. Balogun has just signed a new contract, so we're assuming that he's going to stay. We have four strikers, and we are not able to move two out of them out, and we are still thinking of bringing one new striker. Like, what is the logic behind all of this?
No. See, I think the only way that I think we would even remotely think of entertaining Lautaro Martinez transfer is when there is a concrete offer coming in for Lacazette. That has not come in from anywhere at this point, but there's been rumors floating around that Atletico are looking for a new striker to complement Luis Suarez.
Lyon too, I think. Yeah.
Sorry.
Lyon, Olympic Lyon, they're also looking for one.
Yeah, Lyon as well, but Lyon are cash strapped anyway, so they can't really offer anything more. So if at all something could happen, it could happen in the form of Atletico, but they are actually looking to see if they could potentially be getting Griezmann back with the swap deal that they are actually proposing with Barcelona. Nothing has actually moved forward on that. But if at all that failed to materialize, there is a possibility that they would want to bring someone to complement Luis Suarez, and that could be one of the possible reasons for us to move on, like I said. And if at all there are some wheels to that transfer, then there might be at least a 1% chance that we may crazily go for Lautaro. I don't know.
But again, all this is in thinking that Arsenal will have money to spend, which I don't know if we do, because of we don't know what are the implications or how much financial burden is exiting the Super League going to cost Arsenal, because we literally don't know. Even though what is his name, Josh Kroenke came out and said like KSE would take care of that whatever fee or fine that is being levied on. I think that is going to play a part in how much we could spend. And Bob, before this, we were talking about that there were some problems going on for KCE with financially, right?
Yeah. So the state of St. Louis in the US have actually filed a case against Kroenke, basically for some of the misdoings in their state, and as a result, if they are actually penalized by the court, they could pay up to £700 million in fines, which could as well become one potential reason for them to start looking, or which might be the perfect time for Danny Lek to come back with the second bid and potentially take out the club. There's a lot of ifs and buts here. Kroenkes are money-sucking people, as we all know, and they wouldn't really put a penny into the club, as we've seen so far. So there is every little chance that this could happen, because they know Arsenal are actually a cash machine, and they are doing their best in trying to bring the ground, or the name to the ground in terms of where we are at the moment and how the way we are dealing with the transfers and things. So they are trying to do everything in their regard to tarnish the history of this wonderful club, which is something which we all fear. But yeah, there's been so much things going on that I don't understand what is the possibility or likelihood behind every of these moves that we've been linked with. But as a fan, all that you could think of is just hope, and hope at least something could happen. We've cherished the signings of Chamak, Danielsons, and all these people. Also, we'll continue to do that task on there.
But now it seems more bleak for me than having Shamak and Danielson. At least I don't know. Before the start of all this madness, I was strongly thinking that Arteta could be able to do something with this squad. But now I'm a little bit worried about where Arsenal is heading to. But maybe that would change once the season starts, or we put together a couple of decent performances, or it
You know,
would go the other
the
way.
biggest difference is like when we were signing the Chamaks and the Danielsons and the Bentners, there were 4 good teams in the league, out of which one inevitably would not perform at the same level as the other 3. Be it Arsenal or Liverpool, it was always the case. Now we have 7 good teams, and none of the other teams have any candidates like Chamak or Danielson. Back then, if we had a Chamak or Danielson, Liverpool had like a Lucas Leiva or someone. United had someone who was really bad. Chelsea also had. But now, all these clubs, it's very difficult to find a chink in their armor, if you really think about it. We seem to be left with more mediocre players than good players, and all the other teams are slowly like taking their mediocre players out and filling them with good players. So the disparity between those clubs and us is increasing, is lengthening it, not just in terms of where we finish on the table, but also in terms of the players that we are able to recruit, or we go ahead and recruit. It's not like the clubs always have an option. When there are 3 players that you're going for, you know that some other club is going for the other 2 who are probably the higher potential, better ones. You don't have to absolutely go and get the 3rd player who's not good enough. I think that's what we have been continuously doing, going for players who over the last few years, I cannot think of one player that we actually fought other teams for and got him. Like that high quality, high profile player that we actually beat competition to sign. I really cannot think of a player like that. And by competition, I mean like the teams that are at the same level. I'm not meaning like a team from another league, which is you could say Dortmund. Yeah, Dortmund are a great team. They go into the Champions League year in, year out. But if you really think about it, they have 2 teams to compete with, right? They in their league, they have Bayern and Leipzig to compete with. All the others, even Leipzig, it's only like recently that they started competing. If you compare our transfer activity even with something like that of a Dortmund, it's miles apart. Like there seems to be no logic in how we are bringing in players. And I am with you when you say that you are actually scared as to what's going to happen this season, because apart from Ben White, like I said at the beginning, we really haven't improved this team in any way. We really have not, and on top, we did not have a proper preseason. So the fact that we're expecting all of these people to gel and start playing magically, automatically with an addition of a Ben White is just living in fool's paradise, in my opinion. I do not see, like, though we do not have the distraction of leaving England and going for Europe, I really do not see us finishing anywhere. If we finish 6th, I think that we'll be really lucky to finish 6th. The advantage that we have is that Tottenham haven't improved significantly. So that makes things a little easy for us. But then it has also meant that other teams like, say Villa have been strengthening significantly. So if we are not having Tottenham as a competition, we're being forced to see Villa as a competition now. So I do not know if that shows Villa's progress or us degenerating.
But I was actually going to make the same point about finishing it on a high note is what I was trying to do, and I was going at least.
I'm sorry about that.
No, at least Spurs is still being shit. At least the Spurs is being more shit than us. They seems like Harry Kane is not getting back to training, so that there goes.
Yeah.
So whatever we do, we are pretty sure that Spurs are going to do worse than us. So at least that way,
anything you can do, I can do worse. Yeah.
So that way, I'm still happy, and there is a game with Spurs in the weekend, even though we call that friendly, but I don't see any game against Spurs being friendly. Bob, your last thoughts on today's transfer talks?
See, it looks very blurry as we have all discussed in depth. And that will remain the case until we have more clarity. there's not been any recent movements in any transfers, be it on Ramsdale. We never even spoke about Ramsdale today, and there's been absolutely no movement on him, and nothing happening and on Madison as well as what reports are actually being linked with. So there is no talks of any outgoings at the moment, as we've detailed discussions on. So absolutely everything is up in the air so far, and we're just hoping that in the final few weeks of the transfer window that things could slowly start moving in the right direction that we would want. I don't know. In the worst of things to happen, we don't know. Should we rejoice the fact that our star player from last season has signed in an extension, or is that falling into our own doom? I don't know. Time is actually the only answer to that question. But more there are more pointers to the fact that it's actually going in the wrong direction from our historical failures. But yeah, so I can't really give you a one-word answer to see how it's going. It's still very.
Do you think we'll be signing more players now?
I'm pretty sure we are going to be signing 2 at least. I'm confident in saying that we'll be signing a number 10. Whether if it's going to be Madison or a next street guy, I don't really know. But we will potentially be signing a person in that position, and I'm more as well confident that we would be signing in a goalkeeper to back Leno. That's the 2 positions that I'm fairly confident on. Other positions, I'm not really sure.
And then Picasso, do you think we'll be selling anyone from here on?
I hope so. I hope that we would be selling at least Berin and someone else, like Torreira, Berin, Kolasinac. These 3 are the ones that I'm seeing as outgoing, and AMN if it's possible.
Let's hope so. I want a lot more players gone, so let's hope so.
Yeah, and I think there will be a couple of loans in Nketiah and Nelson, but I don't see them being sold or someone buying them. That would be the more case. So that is what my thoughts are. But hopefully, I think that covers most of the things that we want to discuss. And although we are ending this we started it with a Ben White discussion and ending it with like all the hopes dashed. But hopefully we'll see some movement, because we have been lucky every time we put up a pod. We have been lucky hearing some news, one or the other. We signed, Nuno Tavares, Lokonga the last time we had it. This time we signed Ben White before we had the pod. So even if we are not signing someone, I hope we get, some sales in before the next podcast. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining in today. It's been a nice one to talk to. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.